Namaskar. Good evening, and today, as always, welcome to my 42nd episode of Candid Conversations, which began during the lockdown starting from 13th of March onwards, and now we are almost in mid October. Over a period of time, we've had some amazing conversations. I've met some very interesting people who are not only trying to make a difference in their lives, but also make a difference in the lives of others. Each one has a lot of experience to share, and each one is inspiration in some way or the other. My guest tonight is a very affable friend of mine, a journalist, a painter, and an author, and a celebrity author at that time. And he's done great investigating journalism. He's authored two very good, interesting books. He paints nudes. His first book was In Conversation with the Nudes, where he shared his experiences about nudity and the people, all sorts of people, including painting an 80-year-old nude woman, and got into a complete interesting conversation with her. It's absolutely amazing. It was a completely new discussion that was happening, and his story is very inspirational. He's an avid traveler. He backpacks, goes to Europe and globetrots almost every year. Fortunately, I've been able to get him because this is the time of the year when he travels. Because of the COVID, he's had to stay back. Good for me because I've been able to get plenty of people thanks to COVID, all said and done. So, without much ado, we should start our conversation and shuru kare. And I'm waiting for me to join me. I think he's joined me, and we will get into a great conversation with him. He should be joining me shortly. And
Yes.
hi, Mihir.
Hi,
Welcome. How are
hi
you?
Ashish. How are you?
Mihir, can you please change the angle of your camera because you are, yeah, no, on the other
Uh,
side, much better now. Yes, perfect.
okay, so this will require some adjustment, which I'll fix in a minute. Okay.
No problem. We have plenty of time.
Yes. Thankfully, time is not a limitation.
Time is not a limitation. It just goes on for 1 hour on Instagram, but we can continue. And
Yeah.
with you, it's always an endless conversation. So there's no
I
issue
mean,
at all.
if you talk in time frames as long as an hour, we will lose many of our guests.
No, 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 no. I'm sure many will go, many will
Okay,
come. So it's okay. And if the conversation is exciting enough with you, it is
that's
always,
much better.
I'm sure plenty of people will be there with whom we can continue talking. Anyway,
Mhm.
friends, this is Mihir. Welcome, Mihir, to my Candid Conversations. And incidentally, you are my 42nd victim when it comes to conversing. And thanks to lockdown, I've been meeting all sorts of interesting people. I've been trying to catch hold of you. Finally, I've got hold of you. And I'm glad I did that because you and I have been very old friends. I've followed you. We've shared some wonderful moments together. We've traveled to multiple places together. We've shared many meals together. And I've followed your journey right from, not from the inception, I will say, but right from the beginning when you were starting writing and you wrote slowly but surely. Then you got back to art and you were doing multiple things. And then your first book came up. And I still remember your first book because it takes a very important place of pride in my library. So, Mihir, welcome. And Mihir, tell me and tell all our friends who are watching us, how did your journey as an author begin? I know you have tremendous writing skills. I'm very much aware of your writing skills from day one. You have been a very interesting journalist. You dabbled with all sorts of genres in journalism. But what came up to your mind of actually publishing a book?
So I mean, uh, at the end of it all, we in a journalistic setup, there's an editorial that sort of controls, sort of sees
Yes.
in everything that you bring in, and it's a very sort of edited version of the reality that you want to manifest. But having said that, book is where you have a greater control because it's your book, it's your baby, it's how you're going to shape it. And for that reason, I thought writing a book would be nice because then I would be freer to sort of express my opinion, my thoughts, my experiences, and also uh, my tryst with nudity has been coterminous with my journalistic career, and it is kind of a safeguard that I always had in place, which would I could always go to and deal with people without qualification of their clothing. And over years, I had accumulated some very interesting encounters, and of course, I felt the need to share it with people at large. And I had some very interesting colleagues who were very encouraging about it. I should mention Hartosh Singh Bal, and I should mention Manu Zozar. They were very encouraging. They were the one who sort of forced me to sort of make my private hobby public. And then of course, once I did that, I felt a great satisfaction of having. See, nudity is all about bareness. It's about assertion. It's about assertion of yourself. It's about saying that this is what you deal in this world, and this is what inspires you. This is what sort of engages you. And so I cannot be sort of selective and diminutive about my tryst with nudity because that's what I ask others too. I ask them not just to bare their body, but their mind and soul. And so, of course, then the book happened, and book it's a, but I didn't leave my journalistic sort of approach to the book because it's at the end of it all, I'm not pontificating, I'm not prescribing things, I'm not telling people how to shed their clothes. What I'm telling in this book is, or I'll rephrase it, it's a reportage into my own sketching sessions. It is I being my own witness, and I've been as candid, as truthful. I won't use the word truthful because I'd rather say I tried to recreate the whole scenario as it was, like a reporter, and which also gave me an insight into my whole into this whole practice. So probably the next book would be far more nuanced and won't be as direct as the nudity itself.
Would you like to give a brief outline to a lot of our viewers who would want to know what your conversations in the nude is all about? Question number one. Question number two, to get people to pose for you, right from an 80-year-old woman to all ages, men or women, irrespective of anything, must not have been a very easy task. It must have been a very tough task. And obviously, to manage that, uh, it is not very, very easy to get into that, and it's very difficult. How did you manage that?
See, so I'll reply the second question first because the first question follows the second. See, the idea is very simple. We all make projections. We are never true to who we are to the rest of the world, and that's why we dress up. We dress up for variedly for various occasions. So there's always an element of projection. And we are very different when we are alone. I mean, even with the spouses, people we've been friends with, very close people, but when we are alone, we are different because then we are not in this projection mode. We can afford to be ourselves because our public persona is conditioned upon what we do, what we project as our identity, religious, sexual, regional, linguistic, national, and these projection is sum total of that identity and our inherent need to control people's perception about us. But having said that, when we are alone, we are ourselves, and then none of these considerations come into fore. And now, when I ask people, I don't ask them in a group; I ask them individually. And so, of course, it's a rude thing to ask. I mean, uh, okay, would you like to pose for me in the nude? Initially, I mean, of course, after the book got published, things became much more easier. I could just flaunt a book and say, well, probably you'd be part of the next edition. No, no, I never say, well, post for me because I'll write about you. It's like just be yourself. Can you? I dare them to be themselves in my presence. Or I can also rephrase it depending on the kind of people I'm dealing with. Can
So
you see?
you would be actually playing with their psychology in a true journalistic sense and provoking them to pose nude in front of you. Very
No,
smart, I must
we
say.
are constantly dealing with each other's psychology. Like you're trying to deal with my psychology. And I'm like, okay. So the conversation, the interaction, the socio-economic group or individuals or a smaller group or within family, partners, everyone at at some basic level is dealing with each other's psychology and are trying to influence each other in a way that they would act to do things as per our need, our requirement, so that they fit into our world. So here what I was saying is that my world is when you are 100% in your world. Or to put it differently, can you reduce me to an object? How about treating me like a glass of water? And I'll sit there, I'd be witness, I won't react, I won't judge. I might end up documenting you in terms of my sketches, but that sketch in itself is not you per se. It is a collaboration. And one of my subjects, who is a very eloquent writer, had put it beautifully. He said, well, I want to
Yes.
see how I look from your eyes. So what I
Mhm.
end up drawing has an element of me as well. It is how I perceive you. And reality itself is a matter of perception. We, no two individuals see the reality in the same way. We don't react to the same reality in the same way. Same realities mean different things to different people. So what I am challenging is that to be your quintessential self, allow me
Mhm.
to be your eyes. And a lot of people agree. I mean, now in a more sort of social environment, this may seem ridiculous, but when you ask people in private, people take time, but they more often than not react positively. And sometimes there's a huge time lag between me asking and they agreeing. Sometimes it could happen after years. But this is also my way of saying I'm interested. And I feel this is the best what I can give to a fellow human being, like a notional artistic mirror unto themselves.
You see,
And
the greatest of artists, and for centuries, for thousands of years, in our Indian historical perspectives, nudity has played a very, very important role, right? It has played an important role, be it the Kama Sutra, be it in whatever way, in whatever it has been structured in the right perspective. A lot of artists, whether it's in Europe, anywhere else, have actually sort of posed nude for people. And nudity, I personally feel, is very beautiful. But it must have been a difficult task for you to get commoners, because some of them are professional models. They love to model nude. But for you to pick up different genres, different age structures, and to convince them, especially per se the Indian society that might be, to get them to pose nude for you must not have been an easy task. It must have been a very tough task.
so initially, I started with that thought. This was my projection into this activity. So I was lucky because I was initiated by a French couple who volunteered to pose. They said, you guys have you done live drawing?" And I said, "Yes." I know I haven't, and they volunteered, and I was very happy to do that because you could control light, you could organize the frame and stuff, and it was very sort of in your face, and which was enjoying and very challengingly enjoying. And of course, I had my anxious moments, but then it was fine and smooth. So when they left, they I did not miss them as much as the need to draw people. And so I asked people, and initially, of course, I wasn't blunt enough. Now, with years of experience, I can do it much better. But initially, I would show them my sketchbook and say what I do, and would you want to sort of participate in this sort of project? And more often than not, they would be flabbergasted, and some would conclude it to be extremely rude. And I said, but what do I ask? I mean, that's the point. This is what I want to do, and I am very embarrassed to ask, but I feel the need to ask you sort of overpowers the embarrassment I feel in asking you this. And to my utter amazement and encouragement, out of the first 10 people I asked, three agreed to pose, which was I thought was an exceptional ratio. And in a year's time, all 10 posed for me. Now, the interesting question over the years is that there are many close friends who I haven't asked because I might, I said, well, it's not worth the effort, or it involves too much of complications, things like these. So they got offended, and there were many who approached me and said, had you asked me, I would have said no. So I said, but I didn't ask you. He says, no, but that's what I am offended about. Why didn't you ask me? But I'm presuming that you're asking me. I am telling you, would have refused had you asked.
I can't hear you.
People in
Can you hear me?
And I can hear you very well. So the
All
point is
right,
that
go ahead.
I've had to face both kinds of people. I had to face people who are fairly, I won't use the word offended, but flabbergasted of having been
Mhm.
proposed the idea of posing in the news. There were also a set of people who were quite disgruntled that I never asked them. So because they felt that this is a judgment on them, and they feel that I don't find them interesting enough. But I think that's besides the point. It's just that there is a limitation to how many people you can do, and I don't want to rush it. Like any good dope, you don't want to rush it because then it loses its sway. You should gap it properly for to enjoy.
So, how many nudes have you painted so far?
I think around 500 different individuals in last 15 years.
Almost a 500?
Uh,
500
oh, yeah,
plus?
yeah. Could be more, yes. Could be more. I don't know. I don't have come, but definitely more than 500. And which are different people. These are not 500 sessions. These are 500 individuals. And I think at least 50 would have posed more than 5 times. And
So interesting.
there are some 10, 12 of them, or 15, 20 perhaps, who would have posed more than a dozen times. There are some, I would say 5, 6 people who have been posing regularly for years. So it's kind of a therapy, their retreat. And now having sketched them over so long a period of time, we don't even interact.
So, tell me, very interesting. Out of the 500 people plus or 500 more, you must have interviewed, human mind is a very interesting mind. It's a very probing mind. Sometimes if you're painting a exceptionally beautiful woman, right? The human body has desire. I mean, let's be very honest about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How would you react to that sort of relationship? Has it always been that while you've been painting, you've been nude, that you also ended up getting into a physical relationship with a woman or with anybody, or for that matter, or you have kept it strictly professional?
I mean,
It's a
falling in
very
love with
personal
someone.
question I'm
Yeah, yeah,
asking
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah,
on
yeah,
a
yeah.
public platform.
See,
You may not answer if you don't have to.
no, no, no. There is nothing personal when you're dealing with nudity. Ashish, can you hear?
No, there's a little problem. I can't hear you clearly.
Now you can.
Yes, better.
Okay. So what I'm saying is there is nothing personal when you're dealing with people in the nude. Personal is when there is imperfect, when everything is there. What is personal? There is nothing personal. Everything is in the public domain. Of course, you
Yes.
get affected because Nudity is the strongest form of self-assertion. It's like saying, "This is who I am, deal with it," and if I may use the word, a foul word, or fuck off. And so I don't fuck off. I stay on. Now, when you stay on, you take on the challenge. Nudity, as it starts in the session, uh, the power equations are highly skewed in my favor. I am clothed. The other person, my subject, is naked. I'm going to look at them and draw. I will not ignore the fact that they're naked. Their nudity will be center of attention. Will get the center of attention, and of course they're very vulnerable, perturbed. But as when they exist in this state of vulnerability, they realize they aren't, which is a very empowering experience. And it may vary person to person, but more often than not, say within 15-20 minutes, the power equations change. Nudity becomes potent, and they assert their nudity or sort of confront me with their nudity. So a lot of people start walking around, and some people will come stand next to me and say, "Oh, show me what you have drawn on my back." Or, "Hey, you only stand drawing sketches, or do you have some other plans?" So then, it takes a while for them to understand that it's just about sketching. So once that stage is crossed, then they get very comfortable with it. Because of course they bring in their own projections. They have to deal with two uncertainties. One, of course, they themselves, how are they going to fare in this sort of an environment which is very alien to them? And the second uncertainty is me. Say, who the hell, why this guy is so paranoid about having people naked and drawing them naked? So once those two uncertainties are spotted, then nudity itself becomes very relaxing. And I for sure feel that I'm connected to my subjects with a notional cord, so I relive whatever is happening.
I can't hear you, Mihir.
Indifferent. So I'm saying
Could
I
you repeat the
relive
thing
myself.
because I couldn't hear you?
Okay, so I'm saying I relive my subjects. So if they are comfortable, I am comfortable. If they aren't comfortable, I can't draw. If they get horny, I get horny. If they get to the best stage, which I call the orgasmic sketch stage of drawing, is when they get indifferent about nudity, which is the highest state, which is basically saying that they forget the fact that they're naked, like they don't remember the fact that they're dressed. I mean, it's a quintessential existential baggage we carry, our clothes. So we are not acutely aware of it because it becomes a second skin. Similarly, nudity takes hell lot of a time to become the second skin because it's the real skin. And so once that happens, then it is inconsequential. Nudity becomes inconsequential. So my idea of an ideal sketching session is that nudity is not the end of the exercise. It's the beginning. It is a ticket to enter into this space that I call private space for public nudity, where you just deal with yourself as you are, and not in confine or a solitude, but in presence of an individual who's going to confront you. And then everything becomes immaterial. You are in this very sort of luminous space where you deal with life as it is. And I think that's what engages people. And then nothing is a barrier. Age, sex, gender, all sorts of descriptions, adjectives become irrelevant. One energy is dealing with another energy, and both energies are a manifestation of a larger energy. And it's beautiful.
So you're basically reduced to starkly basics without any inhibitions. And you let yourself go when you're painting.
Inhibition is also a human construct. I mean, inhibition, if you ask two monkeys what is inhibition, they would know. It's not applicable. It's not that they don't have inhibition. It is not applicable. It's not applicable in their society. So we, for some moment, get into that mode where a lot of things that we give so much of importance to is not applicable.
So Mihir, 500 plus nude models,
Yes,
whom you've sort of painted or
Yes.
sort of interacted with.
yes,
Each character is different. And every
Yes.
time you're meeting someone new, is a great process of learning. You
Hmm.
know, uh, would you like to share a couple of very fascinating anecdotes while you were painting nudes, which have impacted you probably in your life tremendously? I mean, that would be interesting for everybody to know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
inquisitive.
yeah. There have been very, very significant people who have posed for me, politicians, um, writers, even strippers themselves. I mean, Naga sadhus have posed for me, all sorts of people, but they're never used to. Nobody is ever used to that kind of undivided stare because that's what sketching required. You have to constantly refer to a person.
Yes.
And so I mean there've been so many people, like you were talking about this old lady. I thought that was one of an eye opener kind of an experience, and it was sad because when you confront reality, it is both kinds. Sometimes you get to know beautiful
You know,
things about. Haha.
that story actually penetrated very deep in my heart because, over a period of time, I would ask you questions. You maintain the secrecy and sanctity of every person
Hmm.
you have actually, but you
Absolutely.
did tell me their stories.
Ha.
I'm sure people would love to know this story because it's such a story which has tremendous emotions and a lot of
Yeah,
even
it
a
is.
lot of positivity and how the human mind would go. I
Yes.
would be glad if you could share this story with people who are watching us and who would like to watch us later on in future.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd be happy to share, and I'm very grateful that this happened. So, uh, I would visit certain set of people, and this old lady was a regular frequenter to one of my
Uh,
acquaintances who I'd visit. And so, of course, one day we were talking about my this newfound hobby of sort of documenting people without the qualification of their clothing. And so my sketchbook was lying because I was with my friends and I was just flaunting around and saying, well, this is what I do for a hobby, for convince people to shed their clothes and inhibitions and deal with me in the bare. Anyway, so and that's when she came in, entered, and I forgot to remove, take the sketchbook away or put it in my bag, and she started flipping through the pages. That I thought was rude because she should have asked, "Oh, whose book?" And I thought now this old lady will have a shock of her life, but she kept flipping through pages, and you're like, nothing happened, no expression changed, nothing, as if she was reading Chacha Chaudhary or something, and. Then at some point in time, I felt the need to stake claim at it, and it said, "Well, this is my sketchbook, and if you've seen, I would like to keep it. It's a private thing." He says, "आप बनाते हैं." So he says, "हाँ भाई, you know." So I was very proud to tell her it's not a figment of imagination, though I have a fertile one. But this is absolutely referred to from people. And then, of course, my friend who usually would go drop her because she lived like few blocks away. So she insisted, "आप छोड़ देंगे मुझे?" मैंने कहा, "Okay." So she leaned over me and slowly I had to walk her down some 150 meters to her house. She lived in a big double-storied house. It's absolutely empty. She was from a very affluent family. She herself was a doctor, retired. Both her sons were in the US. And on our way, she said, "आप मेरा भी बनाइए." So मैं and I said, she lost her mind. So I had to remind her, you know what, I do nudes. So she said, I know. Then I insisted, I only do nudes. And she said, I know. Sketch me in the nude. And so one of the things that I started on very early with is that I will not give myself the liberty of saying no if somebody wants to pose. Who am I? I mean, somebody is willing to bear themselves. Who am I to sit on judgment, say, bloody hell, I don't like you? So I said, okay. So we fixed the time, which was a Saturday afternoon. 3 days down the line, I was at her place. And so she was wearing a gown. And so I was made to sit. And the maid left at 12, so I was invited at 12:30, and she would come back at about 4 in the evening or sometime. So was given an hour. Okay, so I am seated, and there was a coffee lying, a plate full of biscuits, and the coffee was cold because I think the maid made it, and she left like 15 minutes ago. So everything was sort of, and there was this like a satin kind of a thing where she made herself comfortable, removed her gown, and I felt like she will, because there was no back rest or something, but she would fall back, but she held on to that position for some time. And I'm looking at her and I'm saying, where the hell have I reached? What do I do with? This is sheer decline, degradation. There is no beauty, and I'm like agitated. And I said, will land myself in trouble. And I'm so self-consumed in this whole process that I was also insensitive. So what I do with I'd use the word brutally, is to copy your form in the sketchbook. And when you are brutal about something, you do it well. Brutality has a way of being very naturally, any sadistic thing that you do, even a thought, it just blends beautiful with your whole system. And then you sort of recreate it beautifully. So I made an exceptional sketch of her in this absolute state of decline. And so she was a little perturbed, and I felt that she's looking at me, then I felt she's looking through me, and she wasn't bothered at all, and I describe in great detail as to how she looked, which I would, we can miss that bit. So finally, she was getting a little impatient. He says, "क्या बनाया आपने दिखाइए?" So I walk across and I show her the sketch. So she has the sketchbook on her lap, and there is no reaction for a bit, and then I see her hand shaking, and I said, I couldn't get what is happening to her because I couldn't see her face. I was standing behind her shoulder, and then I realized she's seething in anger because the first thing she said to me is, "This is how I look." And suddenly the whole complexion changed, and I realized how insensitive, sadistic I can get. I destroyed this woman's vanity in one sketch. I confronted her with her state of utter degeneration. I confronted with her ebbing life. The only thing while I was drawing was the sparkle in her eye. That somehow didn't age. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, it's like telling a lame fellow that you don't have a leg, telling a blind fellow, slapping on the back of a head of a blind fellow and running away. It's as bad as that, even worse, because it involves your whole state of being. But then I realized it, and I said, "Oh, you know what? My first sketch is really bad. Please, it takes a while to warm up, like singers, They sing one or two songs before they get into their mood." So I apologized, and then I went back to my seat, and I was like, "What do I draw now? Because I can't draw what I see." And so I saw a picture of her younger days, like a portrait, hanging behind her on the wall. And so I thought, this is what I'm going to draw. And of course, she thought it's bullshit, and by then she had kind of reconciled with the fact. So then she said, "Oh, आपकी कॉफी ठंडी हो गई है तो बनाते हैं." So I held her with the gown, and then she told her a little story, and I thought how strong a woman she was. She said, "Well, you know what? I can travel. I have a lot of money. My children are making huge amount of money. They're settled in the U.S., one in the East, the other in the West Coast. And they take good care of me. When I go there, they provide for everything. I'm very comfortable. I'm taken care of. They even have a sort of a full-time attendant, which is very expensive in the U.S. Having said all that, I prefer the solitude here in Delhi than the loneliness I feel in the household of my sons. Simply because they take care of me, but I'm not a priority. She says at this stage in life, her husband died 30 years ago. For 30 years, I've never been a priority in somebody else's life. Nobody looks at me, apart from my doctor. But it's not a sort of an engagement. It's just like a cursory look because he has to examine me. And she agreed for this sketching session because she said, I'm even willing to shed my clothes to get somebody to look at me.
How interesting.
Because it hasn't happened forever. Now at that point I could not just see the dynamics in a physical world, but the loneliness the acute loneliness that she was experiencing. So at that moment, I had this strong feeling to hug her. And then I probably made a move. But then I realized she is just wearing a gown and it will be so inappropriate to touch her because she's naked. So I checked myself. But of course, there was a strong need, and I could feel that she would have welcomed, but it just didn't happen. So she made coffee. We came back, and I would have had a sip or two. Is when something happened to her, and this whole exercise seemed very futile to her. Or so probably she came to grip with the fact that I had destroyed her vanity, and no amount of persuasion would make her feel otherwise. And so she said, "Now go, it's over." I said, "Coffee? Do you want your skin?" "Nothing, just leave." So I collect my stuff, and she holds me by my hand, and she sort of escorts me towards the door, and she bangs the door behind me. And then there was this perilous silence, and I was kind of trying to listen. Is she crying? What happened to her? So I stood there for a bit, thinking that I might have caused her some serious damage. But anyway, there was no response, nothing. So I walked away. So she died 3 months after the session, but I came to know of it like after a year or 6 months. I don't know, long after she was gone. And which is kind of very sad. But it's beautiful. I think people say ambition dies last. I think vanity dies last. And the greatest crime one can commit to a living is to destroy their vanity, which inadvertently I ended up doing.
So tell me, was it that guilt within you that was saying that you've destroyed her vanity, or that's one lesson you've learned? There are many more lessons you may have learned painting nudes of all sorts of people, and different kinds of characters must have come in, and normal characters, abnormal characters, weird characters, and different sort of. It must have been a very fascinating journey for you.
Yeah. All kinds of people come. They make their projections. Let me start by answering this question by people who haven't posed. So people who haven't posed have put me in various categories, from being a forward to just about everything you can imagine. But none of the guys who have posed for me, thankfully, have come out with an adjective of this nature or anything negative. They had nothing much to say, simply because it was about sketching. It's not a ploy. It's not a ploy to get them to do something that they would not do otherwise. And though initially I did feel its pure sadistic pleasure of having convinced people to shed their clothes, but now the whole experience is far more nuanced. It's to me a more kind of an unlearning experience. Uh, we are so programmed to behave in society in a particular way that sometimes, and we are so consumed in living in our comfort zone, we never venture out of you are a great example of challenging your comfort zone. And because you exist outside your comfort zone, things happen to you which doesn't happen to anyone, and you defy all logic. you know I mean, I won't go into details as to how you defy logic, but it happens to you. Things happen to you because you're willing to step out of your comfort zone. And I think this whole experience is about stepping out of their comfort zone. And when they do, they realize, though they're protected, they're also stifled in their so-called, you know, public persona of a life well earned and wealth and whatnot. Everything, all the attributes that define them. But it's actually, they are overburdened by their attributes. It's like lugging a lot of weight, and when you step out and you with clothes, everything goes. Sometimes they don't even know it's them. It's this. It's like an onion, the core of an onion, which the scale of an onion doesn't know. So sometimes it's very revelatory also to them to level. Oh, this is happening to me, and I'm not doped.
But in this journey, I mean, we'll just one last question will relate to nudity, and we will sort of done now transgress to another subject, which is
Okay.
also a very favorite topic of yours. But tell me, you always had a inane desire to actually paint somebody's nude, uh, who you would fantasize in any form, on a different level, that is one person I would love to paint the nude on, whom you,
I mean,
I mean,
my
there are
my
many thoughts that
problem.
go into people's
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, absolutely. See, my problem is it's not one person. It's whole lot of people. It's whole lot of people. And my idea of knowing someone is to paint them nude because I said, okay, अच्छा ये, this is what he's projecting, this is what he's trying to be, this is what he's. But is he brave enough to be himself? I said, bloody hell,
Mm,
deal with it if you want it, take it.
mm,
So, I mean, at this question, the whole public persona equation sort of collapses. People who'd like limping around would say, turn around and say, sketch me. And people who are like models and they're used to running around in their bikinis and whatnot, we say, no, no, I'm very conscious of my body and private part and public part. I mean, so which part of your body is public then? I mean, no part of your body is public. Every part of your body is private. I'm not allowed to touch people or fondle or whatever. Everything is an
mm,
essential being. You can't have a caste system going, no? Only Brahmins get to look you. See, but the point of the matter is that people who come across as very strong and very see, I think the nudity is also a projection of the kind of relationship you have with your own self. People are so acutely conscious of what they want to hide, not of what they are, but what they want to hide. If what they want to hide is their worldview, it is what they guide them day in and day out. And so this is exactly what I'm confronting. Says, look, I don't want to know what you already have told the whole world. I mean, I'm not interested. I'm interested in things that you have hidden away. And that is when it comes to. But there is no stereotype. I have no way of knowing that if a particular individual would indulge in this invite or not. I am always wrong. There is no stereotype in the sense that gay men will easily pose. That's not true. In fact, they're acutely conscious of my gay because they feel, I might end up doing something. Uh, uh, Older women or men wouldn't pose. That's absolutely wrong. They're so
mm.
comfortable with their nudity. There is no way of knowing. I mean, same individual who'd be very comfortable running around naked before me would want to just not deal with me, let alone pose for me. So, human mind is a very complex thing. There's no way of knowing, but it's always good to fish in rough waters. And sometimes you get a big catch. And when you make a big catch, you realize it's not a big catch. It was just a projection. And sometimes you get these minnows, and they come across as strong people who challenge you, assert you, and say, "Okay, this is what you wanted. Get along with it, and go your way." So I like, see, the beauty of the life is to deal with uncertainties and not guard against uncertainty. This is, see, we are so comfort seeking people. That's why we have insurance policies. That's why we have everything we do just not to deal with the uncertainty. But it's like sitting on the coast and counting waves. It is so much greater to go and surf. So the whole point of it is develop a skill in life to be able to deal with the uncertainty that life has to offer and then go for it. And that is the kind of people you actually meet in this club. It's a private club of people who are
Mm.
adventurous, who can risk being themselves. It's a very tricky business. Then they cannot lie in front of me. Men have the biggest problem is the size. All their projections collapse. They're acutely conscious there.
So tell me,
Huh.
tell me, it's basic human psychology. In fact, I'm loving this conversation with you. In basic human psychology, when you are painting women on one hand, and when you are painting men on the other hand, they must be two diverse mindsets completely, you know, or
Uh,
or are they? How different are the men when they're posing nude in front of you, and how different are the women when they're posing nude in front of you?
I mean, I don't. This is the most radical point of my observation, and and I don't know you whether you'd agree with it or not. But having said that, energy has no gender. So if you're at the pivotal of existence, which is emitting energy, we are a bundle of energy, heat, all sorts of energies, everything manifests in energy. Even the hormones that we secrete is a product of exchange of body energy within yourself. There's no external stimuli. Unless this exchange of energy or heat or hormones or whatever you would want to call it doesn't happen inside you, you won't be interested in anyone outside of you. So it is an internal process. But if you push the boundaries and you say, well, forget what you represent, who you are, everything, and become this potent source of energy. So I am saying that there is no stereotype, and gender is the biggest stereotype we deal with. To negate a stereotype, I'm using another stereotype, which is to say that sometimes when you're sketching, and I've been experimenting this with, is drawing people in the dark. So I'm not even taking any visual clues. So there are times when you're sitting in a room and you're sketching a man, you feel there's a woman in this room. There are so many occasions when you are sketching a woman and you feel there's a man in you get those kind of vibes. And I feel that it is the energy at the essence of it all. But of course, that happens at a very, very advanced stage of this experience, and it doesn't happen all the time. It rarely ever happens when people are absolutely oblivious of anything that they represent in the outside world. They are just a manifestation of their energy, and it's one of the most amazing, beautiful. I mean, at the end of it all, in books that will come, I will only deal with this energy, this whole need to define. Like I'll just to make my point. I will give you an example. Say you go to a library. Of course, it's organized. This is history book. This is chemistry book. This is astrophysics. Whatever topic you may want to, you go, you find a book. But there is no book in the world which is only astrophysics. See, there is a history of astrophysics. Astrophysics also involves certain chemical study. It also involves spatial studies, geography, and whatnot. No history is devoid of any other thing. Everything has a history. Everything has a chemistry. Everything is a mechanical process, and spiritual process also has a mechanical thing. At the end of it all, energy and matter are manifestation of again a wholesome energy. There is no seclusion. There is nothing like this is only history. This is only chemistry. Nothing. So all books are organized in a topic because that's the prime focus of the endeavor. But they're not devoid of anything. And which sometimes gets very easily clued on. And I'm not trying to be Modi, but that is all the consciousness is. That's what's been defined. That's what's defined in the what you call is the Advaita or non-dualistic philosophy. And the greatest manifestation in terms of art has been the Ardhanareshwar. The Shiva is embodiment of everything. So I say I'm everything and I'm nothing in particular. And that comes across very clearly. And people change according to their mood. Sometimes they become a mother, sometimes they become a father, sometimes they become a dog, sometimes they become, and they manifest themselves differently depending on the person they were dealing with. Like you with symphony. I have never seen you in sync with another energy as much as with symphony. And for some strange reason, every time I visit you ever since she's gone, I feel her presence. Because she was so clued in with you. And it's just a manifestation of energy. So that's what I would say.
Okay, now
I hope I'm making sense.
No, you are making a lot of sense, and I'm sure I'm getting a lot of comments, and people have been asking a lot of questions from you, which we will talk at a later stage once part of my conversation is over, because a lot of people are asking you, somebody's asking you a question of, have you sketched any celebrity? And there are
Yeah,
multiple questions that are coming in.
yeah. So I mean, I've sketched a lot
There are
of
multiple
celebrities,
questions.
but when they're naked, they're not even man or woman. What is celebrity? See, these are
Very
all
well said.
attributes,
Very well said. Yes. Very
and
well
and
said.
and in that space, I don't celebrate them because they are a celebrity. I celebrate them because they have the fortitude to be they themselves, and which is true with every individual. So even a celebrity becomes a commoner in that space, and a commoner becomes a celebrity because I am celebrating the form, energy, and is manifested in my drawings. That's the best I can give to another individual.
So, Mihir, all of you, all of them who do not know, must always please order this book. It's a great book because I have loved reading it, and I've actually gone through this book at least 8 to 9 times. Not only for anything else, but the stories that are attached to it, the conversations that are attached to it. It has been published by HarperCollins. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. But diverting from nudity, Mir has come out with another very fascinating book, which is extremely political in nature. It's a book which is of grassroots struggle. It's a book which talks of the harsh realities of the current political circumstances, the political situation. Yet again, it has a very strong human angle to it. Mir, tell us about your new book.
Okay, so my book is called Love Jihad, Love Jihadis to be precise, and it's basically is a travelogue slash reportage, uh, and I am trying to be a mere witness, which is not possible. The quantum world says you can never be a witness. The moment you start viewing a picture or a painting, you become very integral to that painting, because in your psychology, it's what your reality is manifesting at that point in time. But having
Yes.
said that, I wanted to be dispassionate about it. I wasn't representing BJP or the Congress, and I didn't want to deal in any rhetoric. I just wanted to go and figure out what's happening. So I decided to visit a set of people who were in the news for all the wrong reasons. And those wrong reasons were either they were accused of being a Labdehadi, either they were accused of Gharwapsi, or converting into, as per the BJP, back to Hinduism after 500 years. Not that they knew about it, cow vigilantism, killing people just because they were eating beef, and stuff like that. And of course, these issues predominantly occupied
Yes.
headlines for weeks together.
Yes.
But this happened many
Yes.
years ago. So I visited. Now they have served their political purpose. Either they polarize the vote for BJP of a certain community, or against BJP of a certain other community. The polarization against the BJP was far stronger than for BJP. And so all those political angles and stuff. But when you actually got into investigating, or didn't even investigate, you just go talk to them. They will give you documents and all those stories, narrative in and around you them, which was never ever sort of checked into. No editorial
Yes.
scrutiny was done. Like, for instance, a guy was kept behind bars for gang raping a woman who was said to be his son's wife. But he's not even related to that guy. He's a neighbor. His father was scooting free. They caught up a neighbor and declared him as the father, and he remained in jail for a year. And of course, I also went to Deoband, which is this very conservative Islamic school, where they are also trying to defend they being accused of jihadi factory, and they were assertive of the fact that they were the ones who named Gandhi as Mahatma, and they were very much integral to the freedom struggle and stuff. So it is not about Hindus or Muslims. It's a comment on media and how media plays party role. They have extraneous considerations. We, at the end of the day, are the fourth the pillar of the democracy, and we have this great responsibility to reflect reality, to give the right impression to the people so that they are informed in making those decisions. But we have reduced ourselves to mere propagandists, and that's what the outcome of that book is. I mean, whether it's for a political party or against the political party, the bottom line of this sort of traveling, verifying journey was that everything that was in on the popular media, mainstream media, was factually absolutely inconsistent, deliberately inconsistent to present a false image,
Okay.
which will of
Now,
course serve
coming to
for
this and
political
coming to the
purpose.
latest controversies that are happening, Mihir,
Hmm.
uh, I would like to ask you some very interesting. You don't have to answer because it could be because I'm going to ask you a couple of controversial questions because time is too short. But I cannot end my conversation by not asking you. You being a journalist,
Hmm.
what is your definition of yes, Hannah, overcoming fears? You're absolutely correct. I agree with you. Uh, what you being a journalist, there's a lot of talk going of Ghodi media and how media has converted themselves into prostitutes. They're bought by political parties, which is a fact. You and I know that because you've probed very deep into it. You've been an investigative journalist, and you've done some amazing stories. And I know you've broken some very, very fascinating stories. What is your current impression about why is media succumbing so much to political pressure? Is it out of fear? Because media ethics does not say that, right? Media ethics says report curiously or report what your conscience tells you to, but justify what you're reporting. Now, see what was happening in Sujan Singh, this Rajput's case, or whatever. They are running trials without even getting into basic evidence. They're destroying careers of people, completely destroying to the core. They're ruthless to the core. They don't realize that, how much damage they are doing. What is happening to our ethics? And what would you have to say to this?
So that's a very interesting question. So if I look it from the angle of ethics, it's I should be able to reflect reality as it is. Though of course
I can't hear you.
my interpretation will. Can you hear me now,
Yes, I can.
Ashish?
No, I cannot.
I can hear you very well, very well.
Yes. Go
Now you
ahead. Go
can.
ahead. Yes, I can
Yeah.
hear you now.
So I'm saying ethics is a very interesting topic that you've raised. See, irrespective, let's first deal with the ethics.
You have precisely 5 minutes to answer because then we'll have to wind up.
Okay, so I will ask
Automatically, my
it in two
conversation will
minutes.
get
Yes,
deleted.
yes, yes. Okay, so now very quickly, see the question of ethics is that we should be able to reflect reality objectively. There's nothing called objective, but reduce the element of subjectivity, extraneous consideration, X, Y, Z. I don't blame a particular set of people for being rhetorical, being so judgmental, having these media trials and stuff. I cannot accuse a particular. See, it is irrespective whether you're a left supporter or a right supporter. You have an agenda. You are never free of your agenda. You are only portraying your agenda. So there are a certain set of journalists who will say a certain thing that are absolutely predictable, but that's also true on the
So,
other side of
so
the
when you
spectrum.
go, so when you go for investigative journalism here, do you also go with a set agenda?
No, actually, I don't even want to
Sorry, I can't hear you.
sort of support a certain broad political view or are part
Yeah.
of a certain business interest or a corporate interest, you cannot survive because you have to represent something. And I, being
Yes.
a supporter of nudity, my only interest is to carry no baggage and deal with it as it is. I mean, I don't have
Mhm.
any masters to protect. No? I am just driven by facts. And when all those people who criticize a certain set of media are guilty of the same, exactly the same, sometimes in greater measure. So that's what it is, as simply said. So I was thinking if we could probably have a model of funding where it is not through a corporate or a political outfit. Perhaps we may be able to do something which is broadly journalistic. Otherwise, we are
Well,
mere
thank
instruments
you.
of
Well,
propaganda.
thank you, Mihir, for a wonderful conversation with you. Friends, this was my friend Mihir Srivastava, who is a very amazing friend of mine. I love the way he writes. I love the way his characteristics, him as a character impresses me tremendously. And I'm extremely, extremely fond of him. And I would have not done justice to my candid conversations if I had not spoken to Mihir. That is for sure.
And
And this was
pleasure
actually due long time back.
for a long time.
Unfortunately, I was to do a question answer open session with him when his book was being released, and that was
Yes,
over a year ago. Now,
yes.
all I can say is, Mir, thank you so much. And thank you for joining Candid Conversations. Friends, thank you for giving time. I look forward to yet another episode, which is going to be the 43rd next week with another interesting gentleman. And we will talk about various facets of
Yes.
life,
And so
which are going to
I
help
would just
us.
like to say
Uh,
that I'm so jealous of you because you're dealing with so many interesting people on a weekly basis. So it's absolutely a
yes, I'm
pleasure
loving it.
having this
I'm loving
conversation
it.
with you.
And had it not been for the lockdown, this sort of thing would not have happened. And it's
Yes.
becoming a habit with me, and I'm loving every moment of it. So, on
Thank
that
you so
note,
much, Ashish.
Shabba Khair, thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy, dear friends, and bye for now. And this is Ashish Chopra, along with Mihir Srivastava, signing out for the moment until next week. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.